I want to get the read on all of this from George P. Bush right now, the Texas Land Commissioner. He's running for Texas Attorney General. The state's Attorney General, Ken Paxton, against whom he's running, has been pushing to challenge some of these vaccine mandates. Commissioner, very good to have you.
Good afternoon. Good to be with you, too.
Are you for the Attorney General's challenge to these?
I am, because the Constitution is very clear that the president can't just wave a magic wand and compel states, let alone businesses, to force people to have vaccines. And it's a fundamental difference in philosophies between the two political spectrums. And as Attorney General, I would carry on this litigation to make sure that states, communities, localities, and most importantly, individuals have that choice, and that parents and schools as well have that choice, rather than government in Washington, D.C.
Do you believe, if you became the state's Attorney General, do you think challenging an administration, as some, and now we're up to a dozen AGs who are looking at doing just that, goes anywhere? And maybe the president recognized that this was a real possibility, but is hoping in the meantime people get vaccinated, people do all the things that he wants them to do, and even if he loses the legal case, the problem is solved, because by that time the problem goes away. What do you think?
Well, I think it's important to seek injunctive relief and at least stop the mandate requirement. And you know, depending on what state you're in, at least in Texas, we have at-will employment relationships, so it's very difficult to challenge a corporation from saying to their employees that they are either required to get tested or vaccinated. But the big difference in this case that is being brought by Republicans' Attorney General is that a governmental entity, let alone the President of the United States, can't just issue an executive order. And this is an important case on that reason, on constitutional grounds, to define and rein in the authority of a president just by waving the magic wand. That's not what the founders intended when they constructed the beautiful republic that we enjoy.
Commissioner, about your race for Attorney General, you have stood out, certainly in your family, you know, supporting President Trump. You know, he was a key part of your thinking, and even campaigning early on, that you agreed with many of his policies, even though he's quite critical of your dad, quite critical of your uncle, President Bush. And yet, when all was said and done, he ends up supporting Ken Paxton and not you. How did you feel when he announced that?
Well, to be honest with you, Neil, a lot of Texans already know about Ken Paxton's legal challenges, and I think it wouldn't be a surprise if he wasn't forthright about those challenges, whether it's being out on criminal bond or now under FBI investigation for charges relating to bribery and abuse of office. So I feel like that is ultimately what led to the decision. Let's be clear, President Trump also said that he likes me a lot. He likes the vision and the policies that I've presented as land commissioner. We work together on everything from Hurricane Harvey relief here in Texas, our most devastating storm, to pushing back on the Obama agenda that affected our oil and gas industry, a lifeblood of our economy here in the state of Texas. So that relationship is still there. My campaign is going to be focused on.
But is it really,
first.
Commissioner? Is it really? Because I just wonder, and in Donald Trump's endorsement of Paxton came even with these allegations and charges out there against Mr. Paxton. And I'm just wondering, knowing all of that, and he still supported him, and not you, went on a limb, maybe had some family disagreements as a result. I'm not trying to get personal in how those family gatherings went. But did you feel hurt by that?
No, I didn't, because this campaign is going to be focused on issues that affect everyday Texans. So one endorsement that I'm really proud of is the National Border Patrol Council. This is the 19,000 Border Patrol agents that keep the watch on the southern border. As you can imagine, illegal immigration is one of our top issues in the state of Texas. Law enforcement is rallying behind my campaign, county sheriffs, constables, first responders, and what a way to honor them this past weekend, even in Texas, where we welcomed some of the survivors from that fateful day that you reported on during 9/11. And it's that Texas spirit of putting law and order over politicians that find exceptions to the law, rather than upholding and cherishing our traditions, I think will eventually lead to a winning campaign.
You know, intra-party challenges are very tough, as you know, Commissioner, and I'm just wondering how this is going, and whether it's been fractious for the Republican Party in Texas, or regardless of the outcome, you move on, Mr. Paxton moves on. But if it doesn't work for you, where do you go?
Well, regardless, I'm going to focus on conservative ideas, limited government, free market principles. That's what attracted me to run in the first place. And as a military veteran who served in Afghanistan, I ran as land commissioner to deal with Veterans Affairs in the state of Texas. So I plan on winning this race. I plan on being a great advocate for conservative Texas values, pushing back on the Biden administration. But let's be clear, Neil, my priorities are being a good dad, a good husband, and a faithful follower of Christ. And that's what matters most.
You know, you were mentioning 9/11 and some of the remembrance there as we look back 20 years. Your uncle, former President George W. Bush, came under some criticism for his speech in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, in which he seemed to liken the attacks that day to the January 6th attacks on the Capitol. The Washington Examiner, for example, saying that it soured the national debate. What do you think of that?
Well, I obviously love my uncle. I think he was a great president. As a naval intelligence officer who served in Afghanistan and as an aspiring politician to serve as Attorney General, I want to focus on the challenges that face us as Texans and as Americans. We've seen threats from Antifa against symbols of freedom here in Texas, namely the Alamo, which I'm the day-to-day manager of. But just this morning, Neil, we saw a report that Ayman al-Zawahiri, the so-called former leader of al-Qaeda, the current successor to UBL, is now alive. And that surprised the entire intelligence community.
Well, we don't know for sure whether he's alive, right? There's some, I know what you're talking about, Commissioner, and there's some doubts as to whether the timing of this video that came out in which he was commending an attack that, you know, terrorists had made on a Russian base going back to January, he might have been alive back then, but he made no reference to the tumult in Afghanistan since. But you're right, that did come to light. It did raise the question, this guy we thought was dead is alive. If he is indeed alive, what does that mean to you?
Well, it presents a challenge. We have a significant American presence throughout the Middle East, in Central Asia, some of our partners in Asia as well. So those folks remain targets. We have a soft and porous border. I think for anybody that is planning an attack would look at that as a weak point as well and a vulnerability. And I guess, Neil, my point is just that we owe it to the first responders that gave the full measure and to the victims and the families in the greater New York, New Jersey area to remain vigilant. I think that's the simple focus that all of us should be rallying around on the remembrance of the 20-year anniversary.
You know, Commissioner, if you doesn't indulge in one more political, big picture, 30,000-foot view from the sky about the future of the Republican Party. You, of course, come from one of the most steeped and celebrated families in politics. On the left, we always talk about the Kennedy family. On the right, I guess we always talk about the Bush family. And you're part of that family. It's your DNA. But many in the Republican Party today say that family and what it represents, I guess by extension, sir, what you represent, it's the rhino. It's the Republican in name only types who are not the real passion and fervor of the party. It's the Trump loyalists who are now, you know, making their move to reclaim the White House, maybe led by Donald Trump himself. Where are you in that? As someone who, you know, commended and supported President Trump, well, obviously loving dearly your dad and your uncle, I get that. Where are you? What part of that party are you?
So I get support from all parts of the Republican Party, and that's a record that I'm very proud of. I was the top vote getter statewide in the year of 2014 when I first ran, number 2 behind the governor in 2018. And part of the reason why I'm running is the guy I'm running against was the lowest vote getter of all Republicans. So my message resonates across all wings of the party, young, old, Hispanic, white, black, it doesn't matter, because I focus on constitutional conservative issues and issues that face everyday Texans. And that's what it's all about, Neil, is, you know, constituents don't really look at me just as a Bush after serving them as land commissioner, and once they know my military background, that it's about serving their needs, their priorities, and their agenda. and that typically works at the ballot box. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot easier said than done. But I look forward to that campaign, and we'll be traveling around, visiting with folks about their priorities and showing them that I'm authentic and am bringing the right ideas for the office.
Commissioner, thank you very much for taking the time. Always good seeing you. My best to the family. George P. Bush, the Texas Land Commissioner, right now running for Texas Attorney General.